welcome to the Life and Times of Captain Barney Miller podcast. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me, of course, is the rookie, Mr. Chris Dashew.
I don't want to sign your release form. I don't want to sign it. Get that out of here.
Release forms? Should we have release forms for this podcast?
It's a question that it comes up a lot in my mind. I just don't worry about it because everybody's handshaking each other and we're all good. Existential crisis being had on a recording.
On this episode, we are talking about 3 episodes of the awesome show Barney Miller. We are talking about 3 episodes from the 6th season. We're talking about The Bird, which was released November 8th, 1979. The Desk, which was released November 22nd, 1979, just in time for Thanksgiving. And The Judge, which came out December 6th, 1979. Of course, all directed by Noam Pitlick. This is the season of Pitlick. You've had the summer of George. This is the season of Pitlick.
A lot of Pitlick. That Pitlick. You guys heard about that Pitlick? That Pitlick's really burning it up. I mean, look, he is a welcome, even keel to this show. Like, in good hands, or we are with Noam Pitlick, right? Like, I feel like that could be said for almost anybody who worked on this show. But just knowing how much in the 6th season people had to step up because of Danny Arnold, like Noam Pitlick rose to the occasion. Because spoilers, everybody. These episodes are really good.
Yeah, that's funny because I almost said, spoiler alert, these are solid episodes. So we are very much on the same page here. Yeah, The Bird. Well, before we even start to talk about The Bird, I just want to say something that I've been breaking down all of these stories in terms of A, B, and C plots. Just remember, everybody listening, this show is a half an hour with commercials.
Right.
They're balancing 3 stories that they tell pretty well every single time in, time out, and able to take those 3 stories from beginning to middle to end every single episode. It just impresses me a lot.
And we have had occasions where one of the plots is lesser than the others, and that's okay, because most of the time, the A plot or the B plot ends up being the standout. But to your point, we know because of Otto Bruno's book, Barney Miller and the Files of the Old One Too, which you can get on Amazon and published by Bear Manor, we know that they spent an inordinate amount of time getting all of these jokes constantly right and spending 3 or 4 in the morning filming this stuff. Like, the show is as good as it is because the people behind it were literal perfectionist psychotics, which is perfectly fine. Those are the people you want making your television. I mean, Norman Lear is a force to be reckoned with still as like a 90-year-old man because he knows what he wants. He knows how to get it. And his track record speaks to that. And Danny Arnold's the same thing. And I mean, there's a reason this show from 1979, the season we're in now, is still so well regarded by police today in 2023, because it speaks to timeless themes that I think most people in this area of the service industry of however you want to view what police and firefighters do, it speaks to them in a way that's like, not Chicago Blue or NY or any of those horseshit shows that are more about the fun stuff. But the fun stuff is like, it doesn't happen every week. If it happens at a once a month type thing, it seems mundane. And that's what Barney Miller traffics in. And that's what makes this show so smart with the plots, is that it never leaves the station. And that allows it to constantly, while it does feel samey from time to time, the stories of the people coming in can kind of just be whatever. And we're a captive audience held in a bottle constantly with everything. And that bottle sometimes builds up pressure and cracks. But for the most part, it's just those A and B plots. And then the C plot rears its head from time to time.
Well, The Bird definitely has all 3 plots. We've got 2 things going on with the guys in the 1-2. We've got Wojo buying a parrot, which soon becomes an ex-parrot. I'm not sure if it's a Norwegian blue or not, but it does have lovely plumage. That's going on. We've got Harris trying to get releases signed for his new book, Blood on the Badge.
It's here, folks.
It's here. We're going to be hearing a lot about Blood on the Badge for the next few years, I think. And then we've got the suicide hotline operator who tries to commit suicide and is visited by one of his frequent flyers or frequent callers. I know my wife and my mom both worked in psych hospitals, and when patients would come back, they would call them their frequent flyers. So I think she might qualify. All 3 very strong stories, and I really like what they're doing on this episode.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Obviously, we've seen the actor who plays the jumper, Michael Lombard. We saw him last season in an episode. I don't remember what he was doing in that episode. It was the Harris incident. So that episode had a lot of other things going on that had nothing to do with him. But he's really good here, and so is Miriam Bird Nethery, because what they're doing, I think, works in a way that this show tends to work, which is, yes, it's kind of trivializing suicide, but it's also 1979, folks. Like, just take it for what it is. I mean, this show had an episode titled Rape. We're lucky this episode wasn't called Suicide, like in a lot of ways, because it is the A plot. The bird thing is, I would say, the B plot, maybe even the C plot.
Yeah,
It is this season's Max Gale doing kung fu. You know what I mean? It's like, if you were to show me a still of Max Gale standing next to a parrot in the 1-2, I would genuinely ask, what the fuck are we watching here? And that little cutaway of him doing the kung fu in the first like 3 seasons or 4 or whatever it is before they replaced it feels the same way. It's like, what is the point of this? This at least is kind of a sustained gag that I think it's a nice payoff to it, but it is a little out of left field.
Yeah.
Like very far left field.
Barney coming into the office and there's the parrot just there. No Wojo, just the parrot.
Yeah.
That was like, what the hell's going on here?
It's bizarre. It does work because Wojo is an eccentric weirdo.
Yes.
Like, and so it works as far as I'm concerned, but I think what's better is Martin Garner coming into the precinct playing essentially a similar version of the character we've already seen him play, and just being like, I assumed that you were trying to extort me. It's like, right. You know, and then they get in a Pittsburgh jab because fuck Pittsburgh, apparently, according to Barney Miller. Was it Philadelphia? I guess it's Philadelphia.
It was Philadelphia. Yeah.
The city of brotherly love.
Yeah, that was strange. Yeah, his whole like, I assumed you were ripping me off kind of thing, and then Barney has to be like, no, we're not those kind of people, to the point where Wojo doesn't get the refund and ends up giving the money back to the pet store owner.
And there's a great line though, and he's like, I think I screwed up here.
Yes, that was good.
I screwed up, and he hands him the envelope back. And like Max, I mean, look, Max Gale, when he's on, is really funny. I think this season he's been really good, and in a lot of ways, to contrast how not great he was in season 5. I think almost across the board, it was weird. Season 5 was a low point for the Wojo character. I wonder if it's because they were just like, hey, Steve Landisberg, do you want to just like do everything?
Right.
Which, I mean, if you're going to ingratiate yourself to the audience, no better way to do it than just run the ball, as it were, through Steve Landisberg on literally every single gag. Because I feel like in season 5, they were putting a button on every gag with Steve Landisberg. And that was Max Gale in like the second season of the show type thing. Yeah. Like all those back and forth with Abe Vigoda in the second season, it was like constantly Wojo and Fish going back and forth. I was like, that was their thing. So it's interesting to see people take a back seat. I'm glad Wojo is not taking a back seat this season. It seems like it's going to be Harris, Wojo, and then Levitt, who's not in this episode at all.
No. And we'll definitely be talking a lot more about him as we move on. But before we do that, I just really want to shout out again, Michael Lombard. He is so good, and I always enjoy whenever he shows up. He always kind of reminds me of the gentleman that played Boss Hogg when he didn't look like Boss Hogg, when he was just kind of normal looking. He had that very similar pate. I think Michael Lombard might be a little bit taller than him, but he plays flustered so well. I really enjoy somebody that you just want to see them angry or upset, and he does that great.
It's the jowls. He's got those great.
Oh yeah,
he's got those great jowls, and he looks the part. And you know, he's, like I said, he's been on Barney Miller one other time, and he's going to show up 2 more times. He's. I mean, look, that's the thing we always say almost every episode. Like, this show is just for the character actors, and yeah. It is, because it's like whenever Rutger Hauer would be the lead in something, it's like, I get that you want to think he's an action star, but this guy's a character actor. And I love that this show is like, we're going to highlight great character actors and just give them something interesting to do for, you know, a 30-minute episode. And for the most part, I don't think we've had a lot of complaints in this show. It's more on the other shows that we do where it's like, this is the only time they show up. What a waste. Like we've said that on Twilight Zone 85 and Midnight Viewing before, but here, because people do tend to show up several times, like even someone like James Cromwell's shown up a couple times. Like even if they didn't have a necessarily great showing the first time, more than likely they're going to come back a second or third time and have, have a really fun, compelling storyline. Like, I mean, someone that I think of immediately is like Stuart Pankin. That I'm waiting to see him again, where it's not just like self-aggrandizing fat man. So yeah, but again, in a lot of ways, the character actors they're the highlight of the show, and Barney Miller and Wojo and all those other characters, they're just kind of there to interact with them. I mean, that's the beauty of this show for someone like me and you who really appreciate and watch a lot of 70s TV show. Like these people have shown up on plenty of things that we've talked about, not just Barney Miller, and getting to see them here in a comedy setting. I appreciate that as well, obviously. So
the other thing I really like about this episode is just how they continue to stoke that resentment of Harris and Dietrich, and that Dietrich refuses to sign that release form. He gets Barney to sign it, no problem, after he lays on a little bit of that Harris charm, but cannot crack Dietrich until the very end of the episode.
And I like that back and forth at the end of the episode. I mean, I like the two of them. I'm hoping, and I know that it will get there, that they will not end up being antagonistic towards the end of the show. I don't see that being the thing, but I like that even though we kind of saw them soften to one another at the beginning of this season, at the end of last season, I think they're diametrically opposed as human beings, but I think they have more in common than either one of them like to admit, because they're both very idiosyncratic. I mean, Harris, obviously, and Landisberg, I mean, that character is so its own weird thing, but like, so is Harris. Like those are both very atypical characters. So
speaking of character actors, we have the return of one of our favorite character actors in the Desk episode, which, by the way, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Desk, I thought that this episode was called The Deke. I must have completely misread it on Plex, and I was like, The Deke, what the hell? And I guess I was thinking Deacon, like the Jeff Corey character. Jeff Corey.
The Deke, like a hockey move. Like,
Deke, is that right?
I think so. Yeah, it's like a hockey move, yeah. All of a sudden they go play hockey together. Barney Miller and friends take a trip to watch the Islanders play. Okay, sure.
Jeff Corey, one of the best actors, just period, end of sentence. If memory serves, Jeff Corey was blacklisted, and then rather than giving up acting, he started his own acting company, basically, and was teaching acting. And then finally he was able to kind of come back into regular Hollywood stuff, 70s, late 60s going on to the 70s. And it feels like the guy never stopped working, because you even look at like his 50s, 60s work, he was managing to sneak in all over the place. There's a lot of blacklisted actors on the film Seconds, which is a great one if you've never seen it. I mean, this just was so busy all the time. And I just love when he shows up in anything, and hear him showing up as this very harsh Amish guy. And I have to ask you, Chris, how or why is he in New York? That's the one thing I kept missing.
He was mugged?
Okay. But why?
I don't know why he was in New York. Yeah, I don't. Did we miss it? Like, I don't feel like we're not that, like, sometimes we're dense, but we're not that fucking dense.
We weren't both smoking pot, were we?
Well, one of us might have been smoking it. One might have been eating it. I don't know. He was a mugging victim. That's all they say. He's just a mugging victim. And Harris and Dietrich bring him in, and Levitt is like, I was there, and they booked him. But yeah, I don't think they ever mention why there's just like an Amish dude hanging out in New York City. Well, my child, I got lost.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like,
all the way from Pennsylvania. Again, a Pennsylvania thing.
Yeah. And then he starts calling them scallywags and ne'er-do-wells, and it's just he's so good. Jeff Corey is just, and Levitt, the folksy ways. I just like, he's, I kind of want to say this, Richard, if you're listening. Levitt is getting short shrift, and I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
It's fucked up, right?
It is.
It's pretty fucked up. Like, and they have I love how they don't really have an answer. Like Barney just goes, there will be a desk here for you when it is needed. When you are needed, guess what? You're not fucking needed right now. Like it's fucked up in a way that like it makes me really empathize with the Levitt character in a way I was not expecting.
Oh yeah. It makes me empathize with Barney a little bit more because Levitt feels like one of my employees where it's just like, hey, this thing is wrong and it should be fixed. And it's like, yeah, you're right. It should be, but I'm completely powerless to do anything about it. So yeah, you can continue to complain to me. I can try to do some things, but there's not a whole lot I can do.
And ultimately, it's probably not going to change anything either. So, I mean, again, like, that's the thing. Like, I don't, even if Barney went to bat for Levitt, I don't think it would change anything. And that's kind of what he's getting at. It's like, But Richard was right. Levitt is a much better character now that they've given him some time to be around the other characters. And this episode feels like a pretty big character moment for him standing up for himself to Barney, of all people. Like, of all people for him to stand up to. He, like, stands up to Barney and is like, I don't fucking get it. I'm just going to fucking leave and go transfer. Fuck you guys. And he's like, do it then. And he, again, like, I like that arc that they take the character with. I think it's weird that Jack Sue's desk is part of this plot line. I find that to be strange.
Well, I think that Nick's desk is in this episode. I think you're thinking of the next episode, The Judge, even though this one is called The Desk.
No, wait, what?
Yeah.
Do I have them swapped mentally?
Yeah, like if you go to IMDb and you look at the picture that's represented there, Don Calfa is sitting at Nick's desk. And that's the trivia on IMDb is that despite this being called the desk doesn't actually play into the episode until the next episode.
Oh my God.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, it's like I got the C plots fucking confused. Well, it's insane because
It is.
The thing with Levitt happens in this episode, right?
I don't think the desk is missing in this episode. I think it's next episode.
So next episode is when the whole thing happens with Levitt and Barney screaming at each other.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And Levitt is in the office with Barney, and that's when Wojo comes in and interrupts. And he's like, oh, I understand, Captain. Take the important stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's when the judge is going crazy out in the bullpen, and Wojo's all dressed up when he comes in to see Barney.
Wow. I cannot, like...
Well, the titles are very misleading.
Well, and also, what's funny is if you think about it, the C plots in both of them are effectively interchangeable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... God, okay. Huh. I don't... Good Lord. It's like the Mandela effect right now. Like I genuinely sitting here remembering the episode. I had to put it on now just to like, I know you're right, but like now that I'm seeing it, it's like I just,
right.
Because Alex Hentelhoff is in this episode.
Yes.
As Ripner.
Yeah. Ripner's
because he shows up for Calfa.
Yes.
Who's the best part of this episode.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Look, the character he's playing is
he's had a not a lobotomy, but something similar, it sounds like.
Yeah. I love Don Calfa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's shown up one time before. Is it once?
I think twice.
Twice? Okay. Two other times?
Because it was him and his brother. Yeah. The hostage was one of those episodes. And then I can't remember what else. I mean, because he almost always plays a bad guy. He's got that look.
He's got that look.
I love it.
He's a great character actor. He is as good as Jeff Corey is in this episode. That's the thing. Like, you have two really good character actors competing with one another in this episode.
Oh yeah. Well, and then our lawyer friend isn't too much of a slouch either, and even the guy that plays the doctor, Fred Sadoff, he does a great job as well. I mean, everybody's doing a great job, but yeah, Calfa and Corey, they're the tops.
Don Calfa, we're both beyond wrong. Don Calfa has been in 7 episodes.
7, okay,
Barney Miller. Up until this point, we've seen him 4 times, and this is his 5th time. So there are 2 more times. Season 7 and season 8 get a Don Calfa episode.
Nice.
But it's crazy that he's been on this show that many times. I think that would put him up there with the people who've been on it the most outside of the like main kind of body of actors. Even like Hentelhoff only has shown up like 2 or 3 times, like a handful of that.
All right. Does Otto Bruno's book include the most to the least appearances, or at least like the top appearances?
It does. I don't remember who it says though.
Okay. So, all right. So another good reason to pick up Otto Bruno's book, guys.
Yeah. Because don't trust me.
Yeah.
I didn't.
We didn't know that it was 7 appearances by Calfa or 5 up to this point.
God.
So,
well, and that's crazy because
Yeah.
it doesn't even feel like that many. Because I mean, the one that stands out to me is the hostage. That is the one that 100% stands out to me because I guess for me that, I don't know. I mean, him playing this character is probably better than that episode.
Yeah. I mean, because you really feel for him. He was a recidivist criminal, and he ends up getting this procedure done to him so that he won't be a criminal anymore. But then at what cost? Now he's essentially a zombie, and there's all those just little sly jokes, that whole thing about getting Perry Mason as a lawyer, and then there's
the Ironside gag.
Yeah, probably after the accident.
Yeah, that made me laugh, and
that was good.
To answer the question, Alex Hentelhoff has been on this show 7 times, 6 times as Arnold Ripner. So he's been on the show quite a lot, including the first season where he showed up in the first season of the show as Alex Ripner. So
that was like one of the first episodes.
Yeah, which is crazy that I mean, say what you will about what we've talked about before with like, oh, you have people showing up playing. I mean, Don Calfa plays like 7 different characters ostensibly. Yeah. Alex Hentelhoff has been one of the few people who's only portrayed one other character other than Arnold Ripner. He portrayed, I think, a different character in like season 3. And I think we mentioned it on that episode. We're like, hey, that's the guy who plays Ripner. But he plays the same character through the entire show, which is kind of crazy because I want to say it's him and then the 2 gay characters are probably in that same like conversation. But he's great here. He plays that, I don't know, he plays a 70s dickhead attorney. Perfect.
Oh, yeah. Though I'm still kind of disappointed that I have yet to see transparent aluminum after he discovered that in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. So eventually, maybe we'll get that invention.
There are so many movies that I have not watched as an adult that I'm going to eventually get around to watching that I watched as like a child that I will watch now and be like, oh my fucking God, look at all these. I haven't seen Star Trek: The Voyage Home since I was a teenager. And I'm sure when I watch it, I'll be like, oh my God, look at all these people that I literally have been spending 10 years talking about their combined bodies of work. Like, that's what I thought when I watched Hal Linden in Daddy or Grandpa Daycare.
Oh, you ended up watching that?
No. I don't know. I thought about it and I was like, there's no way that this isn't just like very bizarre. Like Granddaddy Daycare feels like.
Yeah.
Annie Trejo's in that movie.
It's funny. I thought that he was in a ton of episodes of MASH, but he was only in 1 episode, but he just made such an impression that I thought he was in more.
Alex Hentelhoff?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great actor. I don't know him from anything else. I haven't seen him in anything else. But if you look at his credits, I mean, it's just like TV out the ass. Like,
oh God,
you mentioned MASH. I Spy is his first credit. Beretta. Like, I mean, if you have a body of work, like Barnaby Jones, Trapper John,
Ironside, McLeod, Mannix.
Yeah. Like it's
Cannon.
And that's the thing. Like people like Alex Hentelhoff are. I mean, that's the reason the great actors are striking right now because people like him fill in so much of what other people like Max Gale and Hal Linden laid down as being the foundation is that those character actors. And that's, again, to go back to what I said before, I love how many character actors just show up in this show. And like Kenneth Thygard just knocks it out of the park every time he shows up. Alex Hentelhoff, Jeff Corey, I think Fred Sadoff showed up before too, hasn't he? Am I mistaken, or No, yeah, he's shown up 6 times. So Jesus. this is like the episode of the reoccurring characters. Last time we saw Fred Sadoff was in the Rankin and Bass Marco, which is why I recognize it.
Oh boy, yeah, a classic,
a true cinematic gem.
Yes.
Zero Mostel as Kublai Khan. That's all I'll say.
I don't know how many people listening to this have tracked down the Rankin and Bass movie Marco, but worth a shot. We get to see Desi Arnaz Jr. on a kite.
Yeah. and Zero Mostel playing Kubla Khan, which is really, really what you're there for. But a lot. This episode is literally like the 6 and 7 timers club, because everybody in the character actor camp has been on the show a fair amount. So, and that's why this is a really fun episode. And that's why Don Calfa's character is not as problematic as I was kind of expecting it to be.
Right. Well, it does seem to bring up this whole idea of free will and, what are we doing to people in order to prevent them from doing these crimes? What kind of person is he? And him wanting to go off on the farm with Jeff Corey, it feels like what you do to a dog, just like, let him go to the farm. Sure.
It's going upstate.
Yeah.
I like that though, where he's like, you mean I could work with my hands? And we till the land and then we have breakfast. Right. Jeff Corey is just, he is dry as dry can be, but it's perfect. Like he's so good. I mean, this is a really fun episode this season. I have really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, and the interactions that he has with Hal Linden, I'm talking about Jeff Corey, those are priceless. The back and forth between those two actors is so great.
Let me look at your hands. Doughy hands.
Yeah, you've been counting money all your life, Mr. Hooper.
Yeah, he's this is a good one. Getting confused about when Nick Yamana's desk disappears. Aside, look, all these episodes are really good. Which is not a surprise, but this season so far has been across the board just like pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about repeating people, and I swear Peggy Pope must have been on the show before, because she just has one of these very distinct voices. So when she showed up in the desk episode, which is called The Judge, I was like, oh, wow. Like I mostly know her from the Last Starfighter. I think she's one of the neighbors of Lance. I can't remember the actor's name, but one of the neighbors of the main character. And then, of course, she was in Truth or Consequences, one of our favorite, not really, episodes of
right
of Twilight Zone, 1985. Yeah, she was in 6 episodes of Barney Miller, so no wonder she seems pretty familiar. She comes in and is reporting all of these crimes, all of these horrible things that she's seeing next door. And that is, who is it? Dietrich and Harris, I think, pick her up.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Wojo is at court, and that's where he runs into Philip Sterling as Judge Philip Paul Gibson, who is completely off his rocker. I mean, it's basically what we just saw with Michael Lombard as the suicide prevention person. I mean, he snapped. Well, so is this judge. This judge is completely snapped.
Yeah, he's lost it, as they would say. Like in a way that, like, he is one of the more abrasive characters that I think I've ever seen on this show. And I'm talking about even including someone like Scanlon. Like the character that he portrays in this episode comes into the precinct as a ball of fire and still more or less leaves a ball of fire.
Yeah.
6 episode for Mr. Philip Sterling as well. We're to the point now where they're just like bringing in all the people that just have been doing it so well. Peggy Pope and 9 to 5. That's what I saw her in earlier this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's
a great movie.
So good. She just has that look,
Oh,
it's I don't know. Like she does looking pathetic really well. Like I don't know.
And she can put a button on a scene like nobody's business. You're just like, she will give you that last little bit to just take that joke over the line, because she usually plays clueless very, very well.
Yeah. Speaking of playing clueless really well, I like the idea that not Max Gale, but the character that Max Gale plays, Wojo Howitz, gets really bent out of shape, and Barney's like, "Hey, you look really nice." He's like, "What? I can't look nice? I mean, I can't dress up? I can't just look nice for once?" He's like, "I didn't say that. I'm going to court though." It's like, bro, you're like, oh my god, Wojo Howitz has finally come back around as a character. Yeah. I'm so glad, because I was getting really tired of complaining about how much of a ding dong he was acting last season, because it was insufferable how kind of much he had regressed from season 4 into season 5.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's so funny to me to go back to the bird episode. He basically, he wants this animal to live in a cage at his house. And when he comes to work, he just puts people in cages.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. You got a thing here. All right.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't call that bird a sex worker as well.
Yes.
To demean it.
That's why it's either go out and rent a sex worker or buy a bird.
Right.
So.
And well, he made his choice this time.
This time, yeah.
This time. I do like how he's in his suit the entire episode. It does not work. He looks ridiculous.
He does, yeah. Especially that wide tie that he's got. That Windsor knot is so big.
Oh, and the vest. He looks more like he would be I don't know, like a background character in the Untouchables. That's what he looks. He looks out of place. Like really out of place. And I don't know, maybe it's just because like I feel like when he's wearing a suit, I can't take him seriously.
Right.
I mean, that's what it is, obviously. But like, it's just because I don't know. I just can't take him. Every time I look at him, it's like, I can't take you seriously while you're wearing that suit.
Right. I do love the scene where he's arresting or taking the information from the judge and the judge is taking the information from him. And especially we get a name joke. We haven't had a Wojo name joke in forever. And here we are finally where he's trying to give his name and the judge is just like, you don't scare me.
I did appreciate we finally got a name joke for the first time this season. Yeah. But can we talk about the from last episode titular desk?
Yes.
It's bizarre.
Well, the station house looks so different without that desk there. I've grown so used to it being there that when I saw it without, I was like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, it's permanent, right?
The desk going away?
Yeah.
No, they bring it back at the end.
But like, is it gonna what is the reason for it to stay? That's my point. Like, it's weird that it comes back, but like, it should just stay gone. I'm
very curious if now Levitt's going to be coming up here. I mean, it's almost like we're left on a cliffhanger.
That's what I mean. Like they bring it back, but like why did it come back? Because like it doesn't narratively, it doesn't make any sense unless it's like this is where Levitt sits. But then it just feels like, well, what you're forgetting that Yamana sat there. Like, I mean, I guess it doesn't. I guess it's different than Vagoda though, because Vagoda left the show. I mean, Jack Sue would still be on the show if not for the fact that he passed away. Yeah, and the way that Harris is so happy to have Dietrich away from him. Yeah, their back and forth, I like it. I'm like I said, I'm assuming it will eventually right itself, but I do like that they just keep playing up the animosity between the two, but it's really one-sided. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just Harris. Oh, yeah. I don't think Dietrich has any problems with anybody, really. I'm not sure Dietrich cares enough. No. I'm not sure Dietrich is grounded enough to care. So, yeah. I like that Peggy Pope's character is kind of, I don't know, and I wouldn't say nuts, but they yeah, she and the judge are nuts, basically. Yeah. I guess so. Like, different shades of nuts. Right. Dietrich and Harris go over to her place. They find hundreds upon hundreds of TV guides and start reading some of the soap opera listings and realize that it's very much like that episode with Nick, speaking of Nick, where there was somebody who was performing the crimes of whatever the detective shows were. It was like a TV guide thief. That's right. She's really good. She plays that character that kind of like, oh, I didn't know there, whatever. Like she plays that perfectly. I mean, she does. Yeah, she's great. But then, I mean, in 9 to 5, I want to say she's like the character that's like ratting on everybody. So like she can play both of those kind of that spectrum really well of like an unstable character. I don't know. I think it's her eyes. It's got to be like, she just has those really big eyes. But she's great. And obviously all of the praise that I gave to Ron Carey at the last episode that I thought was this episode is still applicable here. He's really good in this episode. He might actually be one of the best parts of this episode. I think he is. Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think it's because we finally get to see the character have not a backbone per se, but a little bit of a backbone. Oh, yeah. He absolutely stands up for himself in this. Yeah. Now, again, it all feels very hollow and Barney feels very patronizing. And so it's like there is like you mentioned, it's kind of a cliffhanger. There isn't really a conclusion. And I don't think that the people who made this show necessarily cared about having a conclusion, because conclusions mean people aren't watching anymore. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's like moonlighting. The moment they were together, it's like, who fucking cares anymore? Like,
Right.
it's the chase, not the destination. So, and that's what it feels like here. And I don't think he'll ever become anything. And he'll just be the guy who shows up, because that's the only thing that I think really ultimately makes sense.
I think you're right. Yeah. And really, we are halfway through this first season, I think, or somewhere around there. And then we will have 2 more seasons of this. And so I think they can keep that joke going for 2.5 seasons.
Well, and I think also, given the fact that like they lean on it, but they don't lean on it all the time. Like he didn't even show up in the first episode, the bird. So it's sometimes they don't even have to have him, which he is missed when he doesn't show up. I'll tell you that much. At this point, I do miss him as a character actor and as a character presence. I do miss him when he's not there.
Listen to you.
I know. Yeah. Shill that I am. I did it, folks. I came full circle. Richard and Otto and everybody else who told us that was going to be the case are just smirking. Like, and they're right. They're right, because they did a good job.
Like Luger. Now they like Levitt. You guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, hey, I think that's the success of the writing team and the people who work on this show, is to really make some of these lesser characters that are introduced in maybe not the most palatable ways more palatable, by making them real characters as opposed to just a short joke and whatever James Gregory's character was doing that first season. I still am not quite sure what he was doing.
Well, hopefully we'll get some Luger when we come back around next time. We're going to be talking about the DNA story, the dentist, and no article, People's Court. And I think this is definitely way before Judge Wapner's People's Court. So just so you know, Judge Wapner will not be showing up in this episode.
I thought it was is Judge Joe Brown a similar thing?
Yes. Yeah. After People's Court, they started popping up all over. Judge Judy, Joe Brown. Gosh, I can't even remember all the Steve Harvey. Isn't he a judge at something?
I wanted to make the joke that I was disappointed this episode wasn't about Judge Reinhold, but I figured not enough people would care about Judge Reinhold. Frankly,
it's a good joke, though. I like it.
I mean, I love
the Taxi Barney Miller crossover that we never got.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Boy, that is a weird thing we never got. Can you imagine just them hauling Chris Lloyd from Taxi into Barney Miller? Like,
you ruined my life.
I have to work at a taxi stand now. With all these psychos and this really short guy.
Can you imagine Louis De Palma in The Cage? That'd be amazing.
Fucking great. That's my point. Like, that's the thing. Now that we live in a time of like everything is everywhere else all the time. Like, yeah, it's just like it would be nice for these things to have existed. And look, I mean, plenty of these shows were crossover shows or spin-off shows. This show had its own spin-off show. You couldn't convince me it almost didn't try to do 2. But I mean, that Wojo episode, I will never be convinced, was a genuine attempt at a spin-off. But
self-sabotage.
Yeah, this show has its own spinoff. It had fish. Like, it was very much of the 70s. It's kind of surprising the Jeffersons didn't show up in this show in a lot of ways, like, because that was a thing that did happen on other things.
Yeah. Yeah, there's got to be an excuse. I mean, obviously, somebody gets into Alex's taxi and is crazy, so he has to take him to, the nearest police station was here at the 12th precinct, or, somebody mugs George Jefferson and nearest police station, 12th precinct.
Right. Like, you have the in-universe cops. Like, if I were making this show now, the show that I would make would be like CBS or ABC. I would just get the actors from the other shows, just show up from time to time, because A, people like that, and B, the people who like the other show would like that, because it's just a thing you don't get to see. And that would have been fun. But to be fair, the show has enough character actors. The stable of character actors is deep enough that they don't need to resort to anybody else's shows. They've got their own, which I think is just as exciting and entertaining.
So until we come back next month, Chris, what are you working on these days?
It's podcasting, weirdingwaymedia.com.
That's fair.
The shows that you're welcome. Goodbye. That's where everything that you and I work on, this show, the finished Kolchak tapes, Dreams for Sale, which is coming to a close. We work on that with Father Malone, Columbo, all the good things that you and I work on together. You can find that at weirdingwaymedia.com. What about you, Mike? What's keeping you busy?
Well, pretty much a lot of the same stuff. All my stuff is over at weirdingwaymedia.com, including the show that I work on called The Projection Booth. And that keeps me very busy, but I'm really glad that we can talk about other things such as 70s detectives and horror shows. So Conan, what is best in life? Night Gallery, Barney Miller, Columbo, and to see their women driven before them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Good place to stop, I think.
Good place to stop. Or do you want to do the outro, the John Walker thing?
Oh, yeah. Special thanks to John Walker for doing our theme. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Please rate and review us wherever you get the show. I guess they're now doing ratings at like Pod Addict and other things. So check your podcast player. You might be able to rate our show through there. That would be very cool.
And you should.